Hi guys, my name is Anna. I'm a student of Art of Psychology. Today I'm going to present my first video on my understanding of psychology. Firstly, do you guys know what is psychology? Psychology is defined as the science that deals with emotional and mental process. An example of psychology is the course of study that someone takes to become a therapist. Psychology is the summary of a person's characteristic, including how they think, feel, or behave. In other words, psychology, also known as multifaceted discipline, and includes many subfields of study, such areas as human development, sport, health, clinical, social behavior, and cognitive process. Nowadays, psychology is more important to learn because the total number of human depression is increased. In the early days of psychology, there were two dominant theoretical perspectives regarding how the brain works: structuralism and functionalism. There are four main goals in psychology, which is describe, explain, predict, control, and improve. The first goal of psychology is to describe the behavior. It's also involved in naming and classifying behavior. This description is based on systematic procedure in contrast to haphazard description of common sense, and it also based on careful. The second goal of psychology is explaining the behavior or phenomenon that was described. This goal is concerned by psychologists to find out why such behavior is occur. Not only that, they also take help of existing theories and knowledge to understand and explain behavior. In other cases, if there are no theories of research that can explain such behavior, the psychologists will make a tentative statement and do test such hypotheses. Another important goal of psychologists is to forecast future events. By analyzing the relationship between different variables, psychologists can predict what will be relation between them. Prediction helps in modifying behavior as it facilitated by understanding of the relationship. The fourth goal is if psychology is to control or modify and change the existing behavior. The behaviors that need to be corrected are modified through physiological techniques. Only psychologists who work in applied of psychology are concerned with controlling behavior, but the psychologist which is working in theoretical or basic normally only concerned with the first three goals of psychology. Now we go for perspective in psychology. There are 7 perspectives in psychology. First is the psychodynamic perspective. The psychodynamic perspective emphasizes unconscious psychological process, for example, wishes and fears of which we're not fully aware, and contents that childhood experience are crucial in shaping adult personality. The psychodynamic perspective has evolved considerably since Freud time and now includes innovative new approaches such as object relation theory and neuropsychoanalysis. Some psychodynamic concepts have held up well to empirical scrutiny, while others have not. An aspect of the theory remains controversial, but the psychodynamic perspective continues to influence many different areas of contemporary psychology. Some examples of behaviors and their explanation using psychodynamic perspective include obsessive hand-washing could be linked to a trauma in childhood that now causes this behavior. Nail biting may be caused by an anxiety-inducing childhood event. Second perspective in psychology is the behaviorist perspective. The behaviorist perspective is theory of psychology stated that human behaviors learn and not initiate. The behaviorist approach asserts that human beings have no free will and that all action, characteristics, and personality traits are the result of the person's environment and the cultural force that shape it. For example is positive and negative reinforcement and punishment. This is the ways to modify behavior. Positive and negative reinforcement are used to make a behavior happen. Punishment is to stop an unwanted behavior. The most well-known example of behaviorism will be Pavlov and his dog. Third perspective in psychology is humanistic perspective. Humanistic psychology is a perspective that emphasizes looking at the world individual and stress concepts such as free will, self-efficacy, and self-actualizations. Rather than concentrating on this function, humanistic psychology strives to help people fulfill their potential and maximize their well-being. Family therapy is another example of the humanistic perspective. Another example of the humanistic perspective is for a person to focus on their strengths rather than their fault. The individual is encouraged not look past his or her flaws as he or she works toward a more satisfied, more complete life. Next perspective in psychology is cognitive perspective. The cognitive perspective is concerned with understanding mental process such as memory, perception, thinking, and problem solving, and how they may be related to behavior. A cognitive personality may explain the difference in behavior with respect to difference in the way people think and process information. The example for this cognitive perspective is imagine that a college student makes little effort to achieve good grades in college course. One possible cognitive explanation for this low achievement motivation is that the person has low self-efficacy. The person may believe that he or she does not have the ability to achieve good grades and thus the person makes little effort. After that is the biological perspective. The biological perspective is a way of looking at psychological issues by studying the physical basis for animal and human behavior. It is one of the major perspectives in psychology and involves such things as studying the brain, immune system, nervous system, and genetics. Biological factors such as chromosomes, hormones, and the brain all have a significant influence on human behavior. For example, gender. The biological approach believes that most behavior is inherited and has an adaptive or evolutionary function. The evolutionary perspective is another perspective in psychology. Evolutionary psychology is a theoretical approach to psychology that attempts to explain useful mental and psychological traits such as memory, perception, or language and as adaptation as the functional product of natural selection. For example, investment by fathers is more likely to be found in antiracial species to those with helpless offspring such as birds and humans than in pre-social species whose young are mobile at birth, such as goats and many other mammals. The last perspective in psychology is the socio-cultural perspective. The socio-cultural perspective is one approach to understanding why humans behave the way they do. The socio-cultural perspective seeks to understand human behavior and personality development by examining the roles of the social groups and subgroups in which the individual is a member. An example of this theory is a child who was born to a poor family will grow up and grow old to be poor also. Another example is that a student attending a football game will act a certain way due to being in a large and energetic crowd. After some explanation on the above, we know that the psychology is begin. Start from goal in psychology until the number of perspective, we can see there is a lot potential in career of learning in psychology. There are different type career in psychology. For example, educational psychologists, school psychologists, and clinical psychologists. For this type of psychologists, they are provide psychoeducational testing and learning of this psychologist course with the use of IQ tests and tests of academic attitude and achievement. They can identify the academic strength and weakness. Finally, the conclusion in my understanding of psychology is there is a lot of option and difference between psychology goal and perspective of psychology based on the experience happen in life and science experiment as well. Now I know how to identify the difference between all theories in psychology. Psychology is the interesting course because it's related to human behavior and includes many subfields of study such areas as human development, sport, health, clinical, social behavior, and cognitive process. Not only that, the potential career in this field also is many, and beside the career, we also can help humanity problem as well. Thank you. Bye.